To multiply decimals, we have a big rule that we need to write down, and it's the opposite of a big rule that we wrote down earlier. If you remember when we talked about when we talked about adding and subtracting decimals, we wrote down in gigantic capital letters and then highlighted that we had to line up the decimals. Well, today, for multiplying and dividing decimals, I need you to write down, do not line up the decimals. Giant capital letters, highlight it. And I'm going to remind us again of the difference between soccer and basketball. They're two completely different games. They have two completely different sets of rules. I would not be a successful soccer player if I tried to play with basketball rules. I could not be a successful basketball player if I played with soccer rules. So we need to remember to keep our rules separate. So today when we're talking about multiplying decimals, we're going to remember to not line them up. I've got our list over here of the order that we will be completing these kind of problems. The first thing we need to do is to put the longer number on top. Notice that it says longer. It doesn't say the bigger number. To multiply, it's just easier for us if we put the longer number on top. So in this problem, the longer number is 3.11. I'm going to put the 2.5 underneath it. Notice that the decimals are not lined up. And I'm going to ignore the decimals because they're just going to go in my answer at the very end. I'm going to go ahead and get an answer box ready. This answer will be negative. I can tell it's negative because there's only one. I'm going to go ahead and put a negative in my answer box. And now that I have step 1 and 2 done, I can just go ahead and multiply. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15. I'm going to use a box for a placeholder. I don't use a 0. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. I'm going to go ahead and add these numbers together. This is 5, 7, 7, 7. Last step, place the decimal in the answer by counting the total digits behind the decimals in the question. Now that sounds a little wordy, sounds a little complicated. This is how we're going to do this. Here's one digit behind a decimal. Here's one more, here's one more. I have a total of 3 digits behind the decimal. That means when I put the decimal into my answer, there need to be 3 digits behind it. 1, 2, 3. The decimal has to go here. So my final answer will be negative 7.775. Go ahead and pause your video if you need time to copy this down. I'm going to go ahead and erase it to make room to set up this next problem. I start by putting the longer number on top. In this case, that's 1.02, and I'm multiplying by 8. This is set up just like a normal multiplication problem. Everything is aligned on the right-hand side. I'm going to ignore my decimals and multiply. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 0 is 0 plus 1. 8 times 1 is 8. And now I need to place the decimal in my answer by counting the total digits behind the decimals in the question. So here we go. I've got 2 digits. So that means there must be 2 digits behind the decimal in my answer. My answer will be 8.16. Now this word is reasonableness. It's a really long word that basically means, is the answer that we just got reasonable? Does it make sense in the problem? And the way we're going to check for reasonableness, or to see if our answer makes sense, is we're going to do some rounding. 2.5, yeah, it's kind of like the number 3. And 3.11, I'm going to round that to 3. and it's negative. So a reasonable answer should be about -9. What did we get? -7.75? Yeah, I'd say that's pretty reasonable. We're very close. Let's try this. 1.02, that's about 1, and 8. My answer should be about 8. What did we get? 8.16. Those are both very reasonable answers. This is a good way to check my work to make sure I didn't make any huge mistakes with where the decimal belongs. Here we've got dividing decimals. Now, I'm going to move my screen just a little bit so that we can see this. All right, sorry about that. I think we can have total view of the problem now. This says -8 divided by 3.2. So the first thing that we need to do is set up the problem. And to set up the problem, that means to put these two numbers into my division correctly. Now this says -8 divided by 3.2. These two numbers actually have names. They're called divisor and dividend. -8 divided by 3.2. The 3.2 will go on the outside, and that number is called the divisor. That's what we are using to divide. -8 will go on the inside. Now, just like I've done before, I'm actually just going to get my answer box ready. And I see that there's one negative in this, which tells me my answer will be negative. I'm going to put that in the box, and now I'm going to ignore it. I don't want a negative sign under my division symbol. So now I have my divisor, which is 8. That's this number down here. Divisor, or excuse me, dividend. Ooh. 8 is being divided by 3.2. And this is the first thing that I always check when students get an answer incorrect on division, is that a lot of times these numbers have been switched. So step 1 is done. I've set up the problem. Step 2, move the decimal on the outside number to the right. I need to move it until it is all the way at the end of the number, and now it is. Step 3, move the decimal on the inside number the same amount. Well, there's no decimal here in the 8, but I know that it belongs at the end, just like we see every day on the date on the whiteboard. And I can put as many zeros after this as I need. I don't know how many I'll need. I can put 1,000,000 there if I wanted to. But I need to move this decimal the same amount. I moved this decimal once. I need to move this decimal once. So now it belongs right here. Bring the decimal straight up. So this decimal moves straight up, so I know it belongs right there in my answer. And now I need to divide. Well, this looks a little messy for me, so I'm going to rewrite this problem down here. This is now 80 with a decimal point behind it, decimal point straight up, as many zeros after this as I need. And on the outside is 32. This is now a problem that I can tackle. I can say that 32 goes into 81, or excuse me, 32 goes into 80 more than once. 32 goes into 80 2 times. 32 times 2 is 64. I'm going to subtract here and get 16. Bring down a 0. 32 goes into 165 times. 32 times 5 is 160, and my answer is done. I'm going to go put this in my answer box. There's that negative from the beginning of my problem. My answer is -2.5. Now again, you can pause the video right now to keep all of this work if you're still copying it down. I'm going to go ahead and erase it so that I can set up my next problem. 1.11 divided by 0.925 divided by 0.925. That's the number that goes on the outside. What goes on the inside? 1.11. And remember, I can put as many zeros as I want after the end of this. I don't know if I'll need them, but I can put them there. Move the decimal on the outside all the way to the right. I'm going to use a different color to show that. I need to move 1, 2, 3 times. Number 3, that means I need to move the same amount on the inside. I need to move 3 times here. 1, 2, 3. And again, this is a little messy for my taste. I'm going to rewrite this problem completely. My new problem is 925 on the outside and 1100 on the inside. With a decimal here, that's going to move straight up. I don't know how many zeros I'll need. I can put as many or as few as I want. And now I can do this division problem. I'd like you to complete this problem in your notes. Here's a way for me to check to see if my answers are reasonable. Negative 8 divided by 3.2. Well, I know the answer will be negative. And 8 divided by 3, well, 8 divided by 4 would be 2. So it's going to be around 2. Let me go back and see what I got. Negative 2.5. I'd say that answer is reasonable. I'd like you to check the reasonableness of your other answer once you find it. Here are 2 more questions for you to try. 1 division question, 1 multiplication question. Have these done in your notes, please, tomorrow. And here's a game that you can play. It's like a Jeopardy game. They've got 3 different categories: adding, subtracting, multiplying decimals. tinyurl.com/Carnes ASM decimals, adding, subtracting, multiplying decimals.